All right. Good morning, everybody watching this now or in the future. Thanks again for joining us for another month of the Schoodic Regional Housing Forums. I am Greg Paduke, Regional Planner at Hancock County Planning Commission. I'm also joined by Olivia Jolly, another Regional Planner at HCPC, coming us coming to us from time zones away. This month, we are very excited to have both Julie Curran and Joey Smith from Great Falls Construction join us to talk about the work that is going on at their company and some of the projects they worked on, and here to answer your questions about development and partnering and all those fun things. And I'll mention before I turn it over to them, last month we had a great Zoom session with the Maine Redevelopment Land Bank Authority. Jen Literal and Tuck O'Brien joined us to talk about all the work that's going on with them and some of the initiatives that they're working on throughout the state and programs that they offer. And to see that meeting and any of our past meetings, you can link to the regional forum page on our website, which I will drop here in the chat real quick in case you need it. Joey and Julie, I'll turn it over to you. Thanks again for joining us.
Of course, thanks for having us. Um, well, great. Well, thanks to you guys, uh, both Greg and Olivia, for having us this morning. This all came through a connection like many Maine connections happen, which was in person at the Maine Municipal Association conference when Olivia approached the booth that Great Falls had there as we were there to promote our municipal work. And one thing by the next, we start talking about our client work at Great Falls, but then also got talking about our development work that we also do. So with that, our motto here, Great Falls Construction, and now with JCS Property Management, is constructing and developing with purpose. So we're going to get into that a little bit today. But first and foremost, I'm Joey Smith. I do business development and marketing for Great Falls and JCS Property Management at this point. And then I'll have my colleague Julie introduce herself real quick too.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. So I'm Julie Curran. I'm the managing director here at Great Falls Construction. We're located in Gorham, Maine, but we do work throughout the state of Maine. So Joey's going to run you through a brief synopsis about our company, and then I'll jump in on some development examples and case studies, and look forward to discussion and any questions you have along the way. Thanks for having us.
All right, great. So firstly, what came first between those two entities, like I said, Great Falls Construction and JCS Property Management, was Great Falls, which was established in 1988 by John and Cindy Smith, who also happened to be mine and Julie's parents. Dad was the builder, mom was the bookkeeper, kind of a traditional American dream sort of story. Started out with small residential, which moved into home building. And I used this picture on the slide here as an anecdote to them being at a home builder show back in I don't know the exact date, but it was in the early 90s, where you could get, a 24 by 34 Cape house built for just around $70,000, which is a pretty screaming deal nowadays. um, so we like that picture as to kind of chuckle at it nowadays, unfortunately. But as Julie said, we're based in Gorham. We're still family owned and operated. Um, and we do work pretty much all over the state. Southern Maine tends to be fairly busy as is, so that kind of seems to be our sweet spot at the moment. But we're always looking to work for wherever a client needs us. Um, then the real estate acquisition and development work really began in the early 2000s. And correct me if I'm wrong, Julie, but I think one of the first acquisitions that uh, my parents made was the office building that we're sitting in right now, which is now the headquarters of Great Falls and has been since early to mid 2000s. Um, and then it just kind of kept going from there, but we'll get more into that momentarily. But Great Falls Construction is primarily commercial construction company, and JCS Property Management acts as its development arm, um, which again, you'll see examples of those developments as we move forward here through the slides. Any questions off the bat right now? No, all right. Well, we'll have plenty of time to have discussion at the end. Um, real quick, I just wanted to show some work we're doing on the Great Falls construction side of things right now. Um, the top one here, I don't know if you can see my mouse. This top left one, that's currently the MSAD 51, which is Cumberland North Yarmouth. Their new pre-K through first grade school that we're building. It's I think just around 100,000 square feet of total, building space, and it has a 24-month duration. We're only into month 5 or 6 at the moment, so we'll be there for a while. But that picture's as of current as last week, so you can see where we're at there. The one next to that on the right is the Biddeford Primary Elementary School. That's a 22,000 square foot, or 10,000 square foot, or 11,000 square foot base, with another story above it, making it 22,000 square foot addition at their primary school, which shuts down one of their elementary schools to consolidate to this primary school. And it can help but add that pretty cool drone shot with the sunset in the background. And in the bottom left-hand corner is a pretty unique one that we're doing down in Wells. It's at the Amtrak Downeaster stop down in Wells off the Wells Transportation Center lot there. We are adding a new pedestrian platforms, uh, pedestrian bridge as you see it, and then 2 elevators with stairwells on both sides. Really pretty unique one. We haven't done a project like that in our history yet, but we're really proud of this one so far. It's going really well. So really cool one to keep tabs on. And then the bottom right hand corner is one that we just demobilized out of. This is a Row Ford Pro Elite Commercial Truck Care Center. It was actually a renovation, not a new build, but we tore it right down to its studs and did a whole new renovation interior and a complete exterior residing project on that. So a pretty sizable one. It's in the Portland Pine Tree Industrial Parkway. So a great project that's just wrapped up. So that's kind of a swath. You can see a couple educational, some transportation infrastructure project, and then some commercial work. And that I thought that gave a good swath of kind of what we're up to nowadays. And on top of that, we're doing some multi-unit housing projects. Actually, Julie's going to touch on one here in a minute. And yeah, what else are we doing at the moment? It kind of covers it. Some affordable housing renovations, and uh, yeah, more commercial work. So I think with that, oh, okay. So to kind of transition into the development side of things, I just wanted to show a list of the towns in Maine that we've developed in so far. You can see those on the right. Um, some more than others, but still we've done some developments in each of those municipalities, as you can see. And there's a couple other irons in the fire at the moment, but those are the ones that we have built or developed in at this point in our history. So with that, Julie's going to take it from here.
Thanks, Joe. Yeah, so Joey did a great job giving a quick synopsis on our commercial construction portfolio and what work we do for clients. I'm going to transition us into the development arm of the company and run through just a few case studies around work we've done as developers. So these are projects that we've purchased and are either actively developing or have completed development on recently. And I focused on some just sort of areas outside of Portland, because I think oftentimes, when we talk about Maine, sometimes we focus on sort of the larger areas that I wanted to give you a swath of just different areas and different regions so that you could see sort of the diversity of the portfolio and what we look for. And so I welcome you to jump in with any questions you have. I'll give a brief synopsis, but I'd love to take any questions and have a dialogue with you so we make sure we're hitting on any points and questions that you have. So just a really quick background, what you're looking at right now is called the Edge at Berwick. It's the former Prime Tanning Facility, which was a leather tannery in Berwick, Maine. If you're not familiar with Berwick, it's right on the border of New Hampshire, and so you couldn't be more south in southern Maine. And the Prime Tannery had been there for many years and was a large employer of the area. And actually, it sits right in the center of downtown. So what you're looking at on the left-hand side of the screen is the before photos of the tannery. And Joey, if you can just circle around the town hall, please. Yeah. So Joey's mouse, if you can see that, is circling around town hall. So you can see it's really central to sort of the economic center. It was the economic center for many, many years. What you're looking at is sort of a demoed out version. That photo was taken probably in 2019, but it used to sit as 27 contiguous buildings. It's the entire property of Prime is around 11 acres, and it is a brownfield site. And so I'm sure many of you are familiar with the brownfield site, but just a really quick synopsis of what it is. So we are under what's called a VRAP on that site. So we have environmental professionals that are on our team, and we work on installing permanent cover systems, which is really, if you look to the right-hand side of the screen, in the current aerial view, you can see many of those permanent cover systems have been installed. So permanent cover systems are things like asphalt and loam and seed grass and other sort of capping of contaminant on the horizontal surface of the site. So a lot of work has gone horizontally here. And what you're not seeing is, we put a 60-inch pipe through the site for stormwater runoff. Many utilities, obviously all of them are underground on the site. So lots of horizontal work happened there. We purchased this, the story around the purchase is kind of interesting. For those of you that are in municipal government, you might appreciate this. We received a handwritten letter from the town manager back in 2019. He was familiar with some of the work that we were doing in other municipalities. And he just sent a handwritten letter saying, I'm a town manager of Berwick. There's a site that's sort of the economic center of our downtown. It closed in 2008 and has really been sitting there and deteriorating since. And so they were looking for someone to come in and make a mixed use center in their village. And so that's right up our alley. All of our development you'll see in our examples really are village center developments. And so this was something that really piqued our interest. So after a couple meetings with the town manager and touring the site ourselves, we purchased the property in October 2019. A little bit of sort of back history there. That property was Prime Tanning went bankrupt right around 2008. And so one of the sort of investors inherited the property. And he worked really closely with the municipality to install temporary cover systems. So sort of to get the brownfields nature of the site temporarily capped, which was a huge undertaking. And the town of Berwick had an Envision Berwick committee that worked really hard, a group of volunteers to the town that worked really hard to get this work done in tandem with the previous owner of the site. And so that was a lot of pre-work happened before we even stepped on the scene. So I want to be really clear. I think it was about a decade of work. And that was integral in our interest on the site. Had that not happened, it would have been really difficult to sort of for us to step on site and be able to take it forward. I'm happy to sort of talk more about that if there's any questions, but yeah, so just, we purchased it in 2019. As soon as we purchased it, we had many outside of public process, outside of planning board. We often host listening sessions on our own just as developers to hear the community. I mean, there's a lot of community interest in this site because it had been sitting vacant for so long. Many people had a lot of history with the site. They had worked there, their family members had worked there. So it's really important that we respect the local community and their interest in the site and their desire for the redevelopment of the site. So we had about 12 listening sessions and update sessions with the community outside of the public process before we started the project. And so that was really beneficial, and we gained a lot of insight on what the community was looking for on the site. And I think that that's a really important step for developers in general to sort of get to know the community that we're working in. So we then sort of entered into the formal planning process with the town, ultimately receiving approval in 2022. We all know what happened between 2019 and 2022. So, there was a lot of virtual meetings and virtual working on the project to get it to where it is. But ultimately, we've since then, if you look to the right-hand side of the screen, we've completed many of the buildings you've seen on site. So Joey, I don't know if you can run through, but so we've completed 12 Sullivan Street, which Joey has his mouse on. So that's 8 commercial units, and it's been completely full for a long time, many of which are women-owned, which I'm really proud of, and then many of which are new businesses, which is really fantastic. We then moved on to 8 Main Street, which was the first building in Berwick. Main Street did not exist in Berwick, so we built Main Street, which Joey's highlighting with his mouse right now. Thanks, Joe. And 8 Main Street has residential apartments in it. So this is all mixed use development, save the 12 Sullivan building, which is commercial. And then we moved on to 3 School Street, which is also a mixed use building. And then 16, 18 Sullivan Street are residential buildings there. So it's a phased project. It's a large project. At the end of it, it'll have 265 apartment units and about 37 commercial spaces. So it's my high level summary on the site. Any questions about this project? So one of the
I
things,
can ask. I can
please, yeah.
ask one. Um, you mentioned the kind of lengthy pre-development process and the engagement and all that, which is excellent. How long does that typically take for you guys before, the actual development starts? And any other parts involved in that pre-development process that would be good to know.
Yeah. So, I mean, my short answer is it depends on the project and the scope of it. This is a larger project, and it sits, like I mentioned, really all of our development projects sits in or in close proximity of village centers, and so just something that we are passionate about and what we focus on, really like a placemaking type development. And so with that comes a lot of responsibility and sort of a lot of discussion with stakeholders and community members. So it takes a bit longer to just sort of suss that out and have those discussions. And so for this project, like I said, we purchased it in 2019 and we got planning board approval in 2022. So it took that amount of time to get from, purchase to shovel in the ground. I will say the only caveat to that is that 12 Sullivan Street, you can see it in the before pictures, that L-shaped building. That is a sort of it was an existing building. It's where they dyed the leather hides. And so I say we kept that building. We kept the footprint of that building, but we really rebuilt everything except for the bar joists in that building. And that was because we wanted to maintain the proximity of the building to the street, which is right up on the street. And we also, a site like this has a lot of permitting requirements. So we had the traffic movement permit requirement through Maine DOT, and then we had the SLOTA, Site Law Development Act permit through the DEP, and those tend to be lengthy permit duration projects. And we knew we wanted to get started just to get the revitalization churning. And so 12 Sullivan Street was a great opportunity for us to do that. So that project did start in 2021 because it's an existing renovation and wasn't subject to the permitting that we had. So all that long story short, so really from 2019 to 2022 was how long it took to do the visioning, to do community engagement, to get through the planning process, and also to talk about the capital stack. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of expense that comes to developing a site. There's a lot of expense that comes to developing a brownfield site. Many village center sites these days are, have some level of intricacy to them, whether that be brownfields or urban fill or superfund or whatever. So those types of things really require a lot of strategy. They also require a lot of discussion with entities that manage that, like the DEP and the EPA. And that's just a timely endeavor and expensive. So we talk to our partners in Council of Governments, for example, at the state level to just understand what subsidies and programs exist to help defray the costs of these added expenses on sites that have, for example, in this instance, brownfield condition. So that's a big part of that early work as well.
Yeah. Also curious with the added infrastructure component for this, the roads, utilities, and whatnot. Obviously, what were the challenges of doing that work, and also what was the benefit of doing that along with developing the housing units and other infrastructure buildings at the same time?
Yeah. So I mean, no one likes to, it's not as pretty to talk about the underground utilities because it's dirty work, right? So but there's a lot that, like I mentioned before, there's a lot that happens subterranean here to make this site function. And so, like I mentioned before in the before photo, Joey, sorry. In the before photo, on the left-hand side here, it used to be 27 contiguous buildings. And so you can imagine there's really not much earth unearthed. There was demo that went along the way when the town owned it. And then ultimately, we finished off the demo. But when we got to like sort of the virgin land there was stormwater to deal with. There was obviously inroads that we needed to make for access. And so yeah, that's a big expense. I mean, that horizontal work is a big expense. It comes before you have vertical buildings, and so it's an expense before you have revenue. And so that's a really important for a developer. That's when you're burdened with a lot of horizontal work at the get-go, it's difficult to manage that because you don't have the revenue to offset it yet, because really your revenue comes from the vertical, not the horizontal. And so there's just a lot of planning that goes into that. And so we phased out the site work. It basically took bites of it. What you're seeing in the current is a more built out version than it started at first. But yeah, it was a lot of coordination. And I will say, I mentioned earlier, the DOTs use this for a traffic movement permit. And like I'm talking about on-site right now, or on-site horizontal work, but there is off-site horizontal work also that we were required to do. And we've done much of it this summer, and more of it will happen this site work season in order to improve pedestrian and vehicular access in the surrounds of the site, which again is great and it's important. However, it is an expensive endeavor, and like I mentioned before, horizontal work is not you don't get revenue from horizontal work, so having to sort of fit that into your pro forma and into your planning can be a challenge. So I hope that answered your question, and if I didn't, please let me know.
Olivia, you had your hand up. I don't know if you want to ask a question now or we can keep going.
Yeah. In terms of the development that had happened through the town and other investors prior to GFC involvement, I'm interested in if there were any concerning features of the property before you all bought it, but also when looking at properties to purchase. I know in Hancock County, we have a lot of also completely not developed land, trees, all that. So I'm interested in whether renovations or working on even brownfield sites, if there's some more reliability in what you're going to find than taking that virgin land that's still got trees and you don't know where ledge is and folks haven't figured out where things can actually go yet.
Yeah, it's a good question. I would say that, before we purchased the site, we knew, obviously we knew of the brownfields condition, and that definitely comes, it comes with a lot of governance, rightfully so, but it does come with a lot of governance. And so that sort of presents its own host of, I don't want to say challenges, because it's not a challenge, it's just its own host of to-dos, if you will. Whereas developing on sort of virgin land or forested land, like there's with geotechnical engineering, for example, it's a low sort of threshold to be able to get the data you need in order to develop on virgin land. So I would say that they both have sort of interesting sets of challenges. Again, I don't like that word, but for lack of a better one, but I think different. And then I would just say, like, and you guys hear this, I'm sure, a lot, is that infrastructure and, what sewer and water and power utilities do you have in the region, and how does that sort of inhibit the size of development that you're looking for, or how does it complement the size of the development that you're looking for in your region? So I think the scale of it, in this instance, it has public utility, but the scale of development, we're working in other municipalities that don't. So it just, you have to really think about that before you purchase the property. what is, what is there, and what do you know to be already sort of something that we need to tackle? Is it utilities? Is it that it's virgin land and there may be ledge and whatever, and then sort of weigh those pros and cons. But I think, yeah, I think no matter what, that's part of the due diligence process. Any other questions about this one before I move us along?
I don't think of others, but I'll let you keep going. We can ask
Yeah.
some more questions later.
No problem. Yeah. So just as really quick photos of the building, we showed you the aerial view. These are the up close photos of some of the buildings on the site down in Berwick. I don't need to sort of belabor it, but it saved the left bottom corner, which is the 12 Sullivan Street building. The other buildings are all the new buildings that we have recently built. And so our style I mentioned is village center development. We really care a lot about the architectural detail and having sort of that classic New England look, classic New England colors. And so when working with our design partners and architectural partners, we're really, we find that those details are really imperative and important for placemaking. So Joey, if we can move us along here. So my next case study is in Auburn, Maine, 186 Main Street. This is an interesting one. For those of you in municipal work, I felt like this was a good example of some of the just the way in which we were approached on this project. So 186 Main Street is currently under construction. It will be complete next month. And it sits right in downtown. It's about 6,000 square foot plus or minus footprint. It's 5 stories. It will have 2 commercial spaces and 18 residential apartments. And it sits right on Main Street if you're familiar with Auburn, which is also adjacent to the river. So so this building, so the way this came about, I just wanted to give a little background on the site. So this site was an urban fill site, which means that there was some contaminants. The city owned the site, and you can see I put their for sale sign up there. This is what they had on the site. They were working with a broker at the time, but they had sort of just information set up there, sort of a grassroots effort, if you will. And their economic development director really led the charge in this. So this came to us through email from the economic development director about a couple city-owned properties in Auburn. Auburn was looking to do some revitalization of their Main Street area, and so we went up to Auburn, and I got in the economic development director's car, and he drove me around to the sites. And ultimately, we landed on working on this one, 186 Main Street. So 186 Main Street was an urban fill site, like I mentioned earlier, which really means that there was some dirty dirt that had to be removed, and then a permanent cover system was installed. So it's a little bit different than the Berwick project in such that the sort of brownfield condition of the site was remediated, and the town did that before we purchased the property. And so AVCOG, the Androscoggin Valley Council of Governments, helped them with that work. And then that once that was completed, we purchased the property in December 2023, went through planning. In this one, I think someone asked a question earlier about how long this took. This project, and I give Auburn a lot of credit for just the efficiency of their municipal team. They were really and I think as developers, and as anyone really, we all want to go and work where we're celebrated, and I think, or where our work aligns with the goals and priorities of the municipality or whoever you're working with. And so with Auburn, we really had very similar alignment on what we were looking for. They wanted mixed use, they wanted vibrancy on their Main Street, and they wanted residential density to bring people down to Main Street. So it was pretty simple, honestly, and so it went really fast. And we purchased in December 2023. Ultimately, went through planning and got approval that next June. So and then we broke ground late fall of that year, the following year. So it was a kind of a quick process, but yeah, it went really well. And like I said, we're going to be finished next month, excuse me. I think one of the things I wanted to mention about this project is post-COVID, it's a different world. Construction costs are high, rents are softened. So it doesn't matter if you're in Hancock County, Cumberland County, in any county, the cost of construction is relatively the same. So I think the revenue on the revenue side, if you're building something in Portland, for example, your revenue is going to be different than if you're building in Windham or Bangor or wherever. And so I think it's important, as you look at that in the early days, like how can you work with the municipality or work with the council of governments to offset or subsidize that, or find a way to sort of work around that challenge. So Auburn's a great example. Rents in Auburn are softer than they are in the Portland area. However, the labor market is the same in Auburn as it is in Portland. Materials are the same. So cost of construction is virtually the same. So how do we offset, that, so we can charge the rents that Auburn needs and not the rents that, Portland has or whatever. So those offsets are things we talk about with really openly and candidly with the city municipal team, so that we can come up with a strategy together. So ultimately we worked with them. This project, we worked on a credit enhancement agreement that was sort of mutually beneficial for the municipality, but also because it's in a TIF district, and also the project. And that was really what made it go. Because this happened at a time in which interest rates were at a high, higher than they had been for a long time. And so the project was challenged from the get-go, but we worked together to find a solution, and ultimately will be done next month. So I think it's just a good example of collaborative work with a municipal entity in order to get the end result that they want, which is sort of increased tax value, increased density, and a vibrant downtown offerings and commercially, with what we needed in order to make the project work. So it's a lot of words. Any questions about that?
You mentioned some of the work that the city did beforehand on the parcel to kind of help spearhead the process. What other work can municipalities do to help a project move along quicker or get a project started, or what other work has been done by other municipalities that you work with to help facilitate that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, a lot of it. So I have a project example in Windham. We bought an old fire station and we redeveloped. I don't know, Joe, if you can switch to the next page here. Yeah, right up on the left-hand side there. It's called Red City Ale House. Now it's a restaurant. It's a restaurant space, but you can see it looks like a fire station. It used to be the fire station. So that had been the fire station for many years. They had built a new station. The town of Windham put out an RFP for developers. We were one of a few respondents, and were ultimately successful in our response. And that project had it served as the fire station, and then it served as sort of a vehicle storage area for a little while for police and fire as well. And there was I don't know if it was because of that, but there was some PCB, which is just it's an environmental contaminant that was as we were doing sort of early due diligence, that was found within some of the mortar and the bricks, and you can't really see the bricks here, but they're on the side. And so the municipality ultimately did that cleanup work, so we didn't inherit that as a issue, as a cost issue, or as an environmental issue. And that it did delay the start of the project significantly, let's just say significantly, maybe 8 months to 10 months. But ultimately, it's just like the numbers are so tight as they are, and we really just needed to we couldn't inherit another issue, and the city didn't want us to. So we worked together on that. And I think it's important to note, municipalities tend to be eligible for grants, whereas developers are eligible for loans. And so in terms of remediation work or early work, there's some money out there, I know, for phase 1 ESAs, which environmental assessments, that come as grants to nonprofits. And so I think it's important, if there's anything in your region that is offered in that early planning that you're subject to grant on, for example, that's an easy thing to check off the list for and make it more attractive. Like, there's already been some work, there's already been some due diligence that's been done by the municipality through grant funds. Whereas if I came in, we wouldn't have had that information. at the onset. And in order to get that, it would have been sort of through my due diligence period, and I'd be paying for that out of pocket. So there's just small things that show. I mean, I think like I heard this once at a real estate event. Like, you know, it's easy to sort of see like municipalities that are investing in themselves, and that really attracts people to want to invest in them too. And I think, you know, when you could say that about utilities, like if there's utility infrastructure work that your town's working on, I think, you know, highlighting that and expressing that to the development community, like, hey, we have this, we're working on this, and I hate to use Wyndham again as example, but they did a great job with that in their North Wyndham area. They're doing a sewer work up there, and I know that that's attracting people to that area for development. So those types of getting that word out, I think people hear that, and that piques interest, and sort of goes back to that what I said earlier. When municipalities are investing in themselves, that becomes attractive.
That's those are good examples. Thanks.
Well, Joey's on this. What's that?
Um, those are good examples. Thanks for sharing.
Oh yeah, sure.
Other, I guess, question I thought of is that, you know, on the sign in the last slide is that incentives available, and you mentioned the TIFs district. What other sort of incentives are attractive for developers like yourself to build housing or other projects? Or what other incentives have brought in
Yeah.
Great Falls construction?
Yeah. Yeah, I will say like the incentives, like they sort of they sometimes are necessities. Like in this instance in Auburn, it was sort of like we were having trouble penciling the deal. Like it was not, things
Mhm.
were not lining up. And so we went to the team and said, we want to do this, but this is where we're at. And so like, is there any tools in your toolbox that we can work with on this? And so that's sort of how we started the credit enhancement agreement discussion. And there was also some ARPA money that the town had, that Auburn had, that could go towards some of the like the equipment. I can't remember which equipment exactly, but yeah, so that got their gears turning. So it was a discussion and dialogue with the municipality in that instance. I think, Joey, can you skip back to the edge, please? I just want to show another sorry, one forward, Joe. Just want to see 12 Sullivan Street if you can. Yeah, so the bottom left here is a good example, 12 Sullivan Street. So you can see that white building. Yeah. Sorry, it was a gloomy day when we took this picture, I guess. But the bottom, bottom third of the building, or quarter of the building, if you will, is a Riverstone detail. And so that came, so Berwick, this area was technically a blighted area. And I will say that the DECD at the state level has in sort of every municipality we worked in has been a huge resource for the municipalities. So I can't say enough good things about that team. They're all working really hard and have a lot of resources and have taught me so much. And so this building, 12 Sullivan Street, we worked with the state DECD office. Terry Ann Holden up there is her name. And in that river detail was a facade element that we added through a facade grant from CDBG, so from the state level CDBG. And this site, like I said, this was the first building we built down, we renovated or worked on down there. The site, as you saw before, was in a blighted condition, and so that made it eligible for this. So CDBG at the state level, and just having that information at the local level for developers, I think is really helpful. I think the facade program is a great program for existing storefronts in areas. I think it could be a really great tool for many municipalities, and you're likely all familiar with that anyways. But and yeah, I think so. CDBG TIFs are always good. I mean, I will say, like, and I certainly understand that impact fees are necessary in many regards, and that there's sort of city fees that need to take place. I will say that I always say this, and I know it's a little bit off color, but when those are due is sometimes sort of, I mentioned earlier, like revenue doesn't come until buildings are completed. And so having impact fees, for example, due before we have a shovel in the ground, sometimes can be a challenge. And I think working with municipality to say, like, can this be due, 6 months into the project, or can we work on sort of a way to make sure, obviously we know we need to pay them, but how can we pay them at a time in which we have revenue coming in the door instead of tons of expenses coming out? So I think just being collaborative on solutions, so that both parties get what they need, is really important. So that would be my sort of 2 cents there on capital stack and all those conversations. So I think, Joe, can you just slip to the last slide we were on, just the final one, back one more, sorry. Yeah, so just really quickly, I mentioned Red City Ale here on the left-hand side. Joey has a couple other photos on here of developments that we've completed. The bottom left is in Gorham. It's called Station Square. It's 33 apartments. It's a bowling alley and restaurant on the first floor, an insurance company. We have 2 office spaces in that tower on the far end, and then a pub on the top floor there too. So that's a good example of that. Used to exist as a industrial warehouse space, but has since been redeveloped, and so that is a good example of sort of our village center. And that was emulated. That's on a site. I didn't mention this earlier, but we pay a lot of attention to the history of the sites. That site used to be the train station stop in Gorham, and so we mimicked the architecture around somewhat of a train station. So it's on Railroad Avenue, and it's called Station Square. Top right is an old school. It's actually a school me and Joey went to elementary school in. It's been converted to a 55+ apartment. So I think a lot of municipalities have old school infrastructure, fire infrastructure, public safety infrastructure, etc. Reuse of that is a really sort of interesting endeavor. And this slide shows you 2 instances of us reusing municipal buildings through an RFP process for revitalization of areas. So I think that rounds out my presentation there. And I think we've got about 15 minutes left here. If anyone has any questions or comments.
I do.
Oh, Wayne, yeah, go ahead. Sorry, I missed that.
Okay. That's right. Thank you. That's really amazing. So, I'm in Washington County. I'm with Sunrise County Economic Council in Washington County, and I'm currently working with a community that has 123 acres. They own it, 123 acres of developable land, and what they are looking for is someone to come in and build houses, workforce housing that would be obviously affordable. It's a coastal community, and remain that. So is that something I see a lot of, like apartment type, but do you do any single home or duplexes, uh, maybe quads or whatever? Do you do anything like that?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I will say, I mentioned earlier, basically all of our development is village center development. So we do a lot in village centers, which don't necessarily lend itself to single family homes or that. It's more of sort of apartments or condos in urban centers. However, on our construction, on the commercial construction side of things, we absolutely do quite a few single family homes, and we're passionate about workforce development housing because we are blue collar workers ourselves, so we're really passionate about that. I will say that we just responded to an RFP about a year ago in Wyndham. We co-responded with Westbrook Development Corporation, which is the affordable housing organization out of Westbrook, because the RFP necessitated that 51% of the housing on this site, and they just wanted housing is affordable so there's affordable housing, and then there's workforce housing, and then there's market rate, and then there's luxury. And so they wanted 51% to be affordable. And so I would say this, like so affordable housing is subsidized primarily by Maine Housing and HUD, right? So the subsidies make it such that they can build. I mentioned earlier, the construction cost is the construction costs really throughout the state. with some nuance, obviously. And I think there's also opportunity in the northern counties for material procurement. There's a lot of trees there and lumber. And so, I think there's strategies probably that haven't been thought of. It's sort of an old school concept, but materials tend to be shipped from far away. Is there any instance where local materials could help defray some of that material cost? But that's a tangent I won't go on. However, I think building workforce housing, having that subsidy, like what is, and I think this is a macro problem,
Sorry.
right? Is like, what is the subsidy for workforce housing, and how do we build that for affordabilities within that workforce range? And so I'm really happy to hear that you're working on that effort, and we'll excited to hear that that's happening there. And yeah, I think it's certainly a need. And we responded to Portland had 8 acres for sale a few years ago. We responded with an RFP with a concept around workforce housing through workforce development. We know we're in the trades. It's no surprise, a lot of the trades are challenged to find labor and skilled people to sort of take on the reins of the folks that are retiring in the trades. And so we have this big dream one day to work on a site, training the next generation of workforce to build sort of workforce housing. But that's a dream, and the economics of it are challenged. So yeah. But if there's anything I can do to help, in your early discussions, please don't hesitate to reach out. I can share my contact with folks.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to add too, with that site in Berwick, we look around there and see who the large employers of the area are. And our property manager, Becky, who's in the office next to me, that's why I pointed that way. She's talked to their, human resource departments to talk about new employee housing if they need some sort of special scenario that would make it more appealing for them to live on our site, and how we can incentivize those new employees to move into those apartments. I'm not too privy on the details, but that's just all to say that reaching out to those large employers of the area to say how can, or what would work for you guys, and then any interested developer knowing that there might be a large employer in the area looking for housing for more staff could be another incentive.
Thank you.
That's a good point. Great.
You brought
Any
up the
other
trades. I'm curious about maybe trends that you've noticed recently in interest or availability of attracting workforce and help in those areas to build. And I know you have your dream project. How can some of the challenges be remedied? And how can how can towns and other organizations help?
Yeah, I mean, I think schools have done a great job, schools in higher education. We're really plugged into, Joey mentioned earlier, we're doing a lot of projects at schools right now, which lends itself nicely to education and exposure at a young age of the trades. I mean, I think, what we hear at a lot of the seminars is like exposure to the trades is less and less as time goes on. And sort of people are older and older before they get exposed to the trades. You're no longer growing up with sort of the handymans at home or whatever. So it's just a different time, I think. And so that means we have to take a different approach. And so a lot of our efforts at Great Falls, and I know some of our competitors, is to work with the schools and try and sort of identify early opportunities to get in there and train. So we've had some of our project managers go in and build birdhouses with middle school students. We had our owner John and one of our superintendents Ben go to I think it was an elementary class and just do a wall framing 101 of a small little wall, just to show them what is construction and what do we do. So yeah, I think exposure is important. And we are seeing a little bit of a trend towards especially, we work with SMCC, which is the local community college nearby, and they have a construction program that we're really plugged into, and we have a few team members that have come out of that program. So yeah, just partnering with those that are sort of already teaching, and helping to supplement that, and spending the time, as a company, investing in the next generation of workforce is really important. And I will say that those on our team that are veterans of the workforce, have just been so phenomenal and patient in teaching the next generation. And that's folks on our team, subcontractors, suppliers we work with. Yeah, I think we're lucky in that. But I think in terms of to get the barriers down, it's an interesting question, and one I'll have to sort of noodle on a bit here before I can come up with an intelligent answer.
There's no direct answer.
Yeah.
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 I would add the Associated General Contractors AGC chapter here in Maine, which we're a member company of. They have an awesome program called Maine Construction Academy, where they take high school students through I think it's a 2-week program, and the students go through an OSHA 10 training. They do, I think, at least 3 active construction site visits, whether it be vertical construction, horizontal construction, highway, road, whatever. They get them out on the job sites, do some interactive exercises, and we've hosted them on our job sites before. But it's crazy. It's a free program. Like I said, they get their OSHA 10 certification at the end of it. I don't think they get OSHA 30, but I think it's just OSHA 10, which is a great step anyway. And then and they also get a great toolkit from Milwaukee Tools at the end of it as kind of a graduation gift. And that's through a program that they found through Milwaukee. So anyway, that's just another great example of how one of our member organizations is tackling that workforce shortage.
It's really great to hear. I did not know about that. Might have to reach out to them to learn more. That's really cool.
Yeah, they're great over there.
Any other questions or thoughts? I guess they're not from me.
Have you folks looked at any developing industrialized building, modularized building, and so on that could overcome some of the weather things? And there's all the modular housing that comes from out of state here, but
Yeah, it's a good question. So, so in terms of sort of modular construction, we have not done any modular just construction projects. However, we do panelized construction, which is not the same, but it is an efficiency saver for sure as it relates to framing, especially framing on large projects where we're craning things in instead of stick building it one board by board, if you will, which does create efficiencies. But to your question around industrial, and correct me if I'm wrong, if you're talking about sort of industrial bins, for example, like industrial space in industrial parks or for larger industrial uses, we did our own shop in the Gorham Industrial Park, which has another use in it as well. And for clients on the commercial construction side, we've certainly done quite a bit of industrial construction. Joey showed Row Ford Truck Center. We've done a lot of public works facilities and what have you. So we certainly have done it for clients, but however, for our own development, we haven't done industrial development.
no, I actually meant industrialized construction techniques.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Panelized construction is also a viable alternative to.
Yeah. Sorry, I misunderstood you there, Tom. Yeah. So yeah, yes, we do. I mean, panelized construction is really, I mean, honestly, it's become the standard, I think, industry standard. It saves so much time and efficiency, for sure. So, but I have heard of, so I know, and I can't remember which housing authority it is. It might be Avesta, but I could be wrong on that, so don't quote me. But that's doing modular construction for affordable housing, and and I'm interested to see how that financially checks out for them and what the efficiencies are that they find. So so I'll be tracking that to see. But yeah, it's a great question.
I can't speak to many details about it, but we did use a insulated panel system at this development in the bottom left-hand quarter at Station Square. Came out of the Midwest. It was, I believe it was called Wally Wall, and it was just
Yeah.
pre-manufactured insulated panels with quite amazing R value. There are some workarounds we had to do when it was installed. So it was an early adoption, I think. So
Mhm.
it was, but it was, it's performing great. The building's very tight, and everyone's staying nice and warm in there on a day like today. So that was an interesting uh project that we used a newer product to do some insulation.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks, Joe, for mentioning that. Yeah, it was Wally Wall, and it was interlocking system, and it boosted the R value to a 42, which is quite good. So environmentally, and yeah, and the challenge with it is that they came in very specifically measured panels, and obviously life's not that linear, so we had to cut some of them to make them work. But the superintendent on there calls himself the Wally Wall Warrior, so because he learned a lot. Yeah. Well, great.
All
Anything
right.
else? Yeah. Well, thank you. Thanks for having us. We really appreciate it, and hope to catch up with you guys in person sometime. But thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, we'd love to meet you at some point in person down the road. I know Olivia already has at one point, but it'd be great to catch up. This was super
Yeah.
informative. And the work you're doing is super interesting, and I still have a lot of questions that I'll probably ask at some point. But
Okay.
when this video is shared, we'll make sure your contact information is shared, and I'll reshare
Great.
your website, and um, hopefully folks will reach out to you with some more questions and product ideas. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, please, if
And
you have
if
any
you
questions,
guys
please do.
have any questions for us or other people in the region, just let us know.
Absolutely, will do. Thank you. Appreciate it, everyone.
All
Have a good
right.
day.
And again, this is recorded, the link and meeting notes and all that jazz will be shared on our website. And next third Wednesday of the month at 10 a.m. is our next meeting. Talk to you then.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
Great
you.
to see you. Take care.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.